Hello once again and welcome to my channel. This channel is dedicated to exposing Watchtower lies, deception and cover-up. My name is Marcy and I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses for over 30 years. I served as a regular pioneer for 10 of those years. I was first contacted in the door-to-door ministry back in 1987 and I finally left the organisation in 2022. Today's video is going to be a bit different. Instead of analysing another development in the Jehovah's Witness world, I want to share my personal story with you. And the reason I've chose to do this again now in more detail is in line with the last few videos that I have made regarding the governing body's handling of the COVID-19 vaccine advice that they gave to us as Jehovah's Witnesses, and how that woke me up and changed my life forever. And this is not an easy thing to share, but I do think it's important because I know that there are many of you out there who are questioning, people who are struggling. There may be people who left the organisation due to the same reasons as me, to do with the governing body's advice given out to us as witnesses at the Kingdom Hall regarding the vaccines. Maybe my journey can help you on yours. So I'm just gonna I've made a few notes because there's a lot of information. So I've got my laptop and I'm just gonna keep having a little look at what the notes I've made. So I became acquainted with the Watchtower organisation back in the 1980s when I was contacted by two witnesses who knocked on my door, and a discussion was started which led to a doorstep Bible study there and then, because I was reading the Bible and I was interested in what it said about the last days, and they came very soon after and provided very convincing answers to the questions that I had. And so that was my start. I wasn't born in. I was the only witness in my family to become a witness, apart from my daughter who later became a witness. But this was before I got married and before I had any children. So I had 5 years of Bible studies with Jehovah's Witnesses before I actually got baptised. And during that 5 years, I got married and I had 2 children. So by the time I was getting baptised, I think my daughter was about 1 year old when I finally got baptised in the early 90s. And I was extremely zealous. I believed everything that I was learning. And the Paradise Hope, the Kingdom message, was a wonderful, comforting message in a world which was very, as it is now, full of turmoil and trouble. And so I believed what I was taught, and I believed that the governing body were God's channel on earth, as they told us, and I trusted their direction, that it came from Jehovah, and that it would always be in our best interests. So when, as I said, I pioneered for 10 years, over 10 years, because I pioneered straight for 10 years, and then I stopped pioneering, and then later I went back and did another couple of years regular pioneering. I had a lot of Bible studies, although I never actually brought anybody to baptism. I'm really glad about that. But I did have a lot of Bible studies and was a good teacher, and I encouraged good study habits, and I enjoyed reading the Bible, and going on the ministry was something that I actually enjoyed doing. So it all went well. I'd had my ups and downs, because some of the times I'd done things that didn't please the elders and things like that. So I was known as being a bit edgy in some ways, but I've always been somebody who would research, and I researched many different things. I've researched the Kennedy assassination, and I've researched what happened with the Titanic, and I've researched Princess Diana, the moon landings, you name it. I've looked into it and found out some things that you would never think. But I never considered researching the Watchtower, because I believe, like I said, it was God's channel. There was no need to. I always felt that was the way. And so everything went swimmingly until the COVID-19 came along. I expected them to guide us with spiritual insight, but I had also done my own research. I had researched what was known as Agenda 21 back then, which was part of the United Nations agenda to bring in this New World Order. And the New World Order was mentioned by George Bush after 9/11. And he said, we want looking to a new world order. And so I knew about this, and I also knew about a vaccination program where they would want to vaccinate everybody. And it talked about vaccine passports and these things. Was years ago, long before the COVID. And I always felt that would never ever come about. I just thought it's just not going to happen. But then along comes COVID-19, and I start to see the things happening that I'd learned about 10, 15 years before. And so, because I'd researched these things, and I looked into the COVID vaccines and what was in them, what doctors were saying, I followed the data, and I looked at I studied them extensively. And during my studies, I learned that these vaccines were developed and approved in record time, in less than 6 months, instead of the typical 10 years it takes to test a vaccine. These were ready and rolled out in less than 6 months. There was credible concerns about what the vaccines had in their ingredients. Reports of nanotechnology, the use of aborted fetal cells in development, heavy metals and other substances that doctors were saying they found it very troubling, especially when there were things like ivermectin that was working efficiently against the COVID virus. But these doctors who recommended any alternatives were being penalised and silenced, while the narrative against questioning the vaccines was strong. So I followed America's frontline doctors and people like Dr. Simone Gold, who were warning about the potential dangers, and I watched their legal fights, I read the data, and I kept up with independent channels who were tracking the risks. And so I understood what the issue was, and I'd already decided that I didn't want this because I believed that my immune system could protect me efficiently if we were told to eat healthily and do look after our own health. So I fully expected the governing body to warn us, or at least to say, be cautious. Do your own research and make up your own mind. I really did believe that's what God's organisation would do. But instead, the opposite happened. The governing body recommended the vaccines. They encouraged witnesses to take them, even framing it as a loving decision. The constant updates on 40%, 50%, 60%, 70%, 80%, 90% of the Bethel family have been vaccinated. Videos were put out about people who were the only ones who could be given a job, and that witnesses went out and found others to fill the roles of people who'd lost their jobs because they refused to take the controversial shot. And all these things were put up on for us to look to. And then we had David Splain telling us that God would not allow us to take something that was harmful to us. And all these things. And I was absolutely stunned. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. Because this wasn't a minor issue. These things were life and death products that had not been fully tested. It was still in its experimental stages. Excuse me, I've got a really dry throat. And historically, Jehovah's Witnesses had always been told to stay separate from the world, to be cautious of medical interventions, excuse me, tied to big business and politics. But now, our own organisation was fully endorsing it, and it wasn't just a casual suggestion. The pressure was relentless. And the pressure that I faced didn't just come from the Watchtower, but I worked on the COVID ward at a busy general hospital. So the pressure to take the experimental health product was very, very strong. It came from two sides. It came from the workplace, with the pressure of if you don't, then you'll lose your job. And then from the organisation, where you'll not be able to go to meetings if you're not vaccinated. And I felt squeezed, and everyone around me seemed to be telling me to take the vaccine. And yet in my heart, and based on my research, I just could not. So I really, really prayed about this, and every time it came about, when I thought maybe I'm wrong, something came up that said, no, you're not. And it was as if God was saying, just in me. And I went under the radar at work, and I was the only member of staff on my ward, and there weren't many in the entire hospital who did not take the shot and keep their jobs. But I did. And I see that as God's protection at the time, that the experience opened up my eyes. I started to think about what I'd been taught by the Watchtower, that we must accept whatever the organisation says, even if it contradicts scriptures, and that to question or reject that teaching is a ground to be disfellowshipped. And I realised that's not the freedom of Christ. That is absolute control. It reminded me of historical examples like the polio vaccine in the 1960s. Back then, the vaccines were cultured on green monkey kidney cells that were later found to be contaminated with cancer-causing viruses. Two of the vaccine's safety testers, Bernice Eddy and Sarah Stewart, warned of the risk and said these vaccines must not be given out. They predicted a future explosion about 30 or 40 years down the line of soft tissue cancers among those who received the vaccines. And despite those warnings, those vaccines were rolled out because those that backed it and the financial cost, they said in 30 or 40 years we'll have found a cure for cancer. So it doesn't matter if we give them out now. And I just saw history repeating itself. And it made me wonder why the governing body, who claim to be God's channel, why would they push a product like that without caution? So that was the moment when I decided to start digging deeper into the Watchtower organisation itself. As I've said, and as people who know me know, I am an excellent researcher. I will spend hours looking at things to get to the bottom of something. And I started applying the techniques for deep research. I started applying it to the Watchtower. And boy, oh boy, did I discover things that I'd never known. I went down a rabbit hole that was deep. I discovered that the Watchtower had been an NGO associate with the United Nations, the very organisation they had called the Wild Beast of Revelation, and part of it was controlled by Satan. I found out that they had financial ties and were using the name of Henrietta M. Riley Trust to invest in armaments, alcohol, tobacco and pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer. So they stood, should I say, to make a great financial gain the more people who were vaccinated, because they were shareholders. Then I found out that they had cited and used sources to promote their own teachings from somebody like Johannes Grieber, a well-known spiritualist, in their publications while they publicly condemned Spiritism. I saw this as hypocrisy. I couldn't believe it. So all of this led me to the conclusion that I never thought I would reach, that the Watchtower was not God's organisation. It was not serving Christ, it was serving its own interests, and in many cases, aligning itself with the forces it claimed to oppose. I couldn't stay. My conscience wouldn't allow it. I felt like Raymond France did when he had his crisis of conscience, and I had a crisis of conscience, and I knew that I had to get out. But leaving wasn't just about rejecting something, it was about finding the truth. Because I have a great love for God and His Son and the Bible. And I wanted to find the truth, and no matter what the cost, I have to know and be with the truth, because I love the Lord and I love Jesus Christ, and I want to serve them. And so I really prayed about it. And as a result, I've been led to where I now go to a Christian group, a Christian church. And since then, I've experienced blessings and prayers, and I've made videos where I discuss the prayers that have been answered and ask Jehovah's Witnesses, well, who's answering me? Who's answering my prayers? Because they're consistently being answered. And not one of them will say who it is. They will not answer me. There's not one. And that's because they have to admit that there is God answers people's prayers outside the organisation. So I'm very active in my truth, in my church, yet my faith is no longer tied to an organisation. I serve Christ alone, and I have found the freedom that the Bible speaks about. I found the truth, and the truth has set me free. So I'm using my voice on my YouTube channel to expose the truth about an organisation that misleads millions and destroys their faith. Because many of them leave, as I said, and they won't have anything to do with religion anymore. My daughter is one of these. She was a baptised witness, and she was disfellowshipped, and she will have nothing whatsoever to do with religion. So what they did to her, and it was a terrible thing what they did to her, she won't ever return unless Jesus Christ himself moves her heart. But as still as it is, she's been out now 15 years or more, and she won't even talk about it at all. So I'm not bitter about anybody. I love Jehovah's Witnesses, and I've got lots of friends that are in there that don't speak to me anymore. I'm only down to 2 friends who do. But I still love them because I was like that. I was in the system and I wouldn't listen. So I have love for those people. I really, really hope that they wake up, and if they do, they contact me for assistance. So if you're watching this, and you are now where I was, whether you're questioning, confused, or being pressured, you're not alone and you're not crazy for doubting. What I would say to you is do your research. Pray for wisdom and guidance. Ask God to show you the truth. That's what I did. I kept saying, I just want to know the truth. Please show me the truth if I think there's something wrong. And it was like the scales fell from my eyes. Do not let fear control you. Fear of losing family, fear of losing friends, or your reputation. The truth is worth it. There is a life outside, and Jesus Christ is worth it. Remember, he said, he who has greater love for father and mother than for me is not worthy of me. So don't be afraid to step away from it. And you don't know, that might wake up your own family members and friends. And if it doesn't, then he will provide a new family outside while you're waiting for yours to be set free. So that's my story. The governing body's recommendation of the COVID-19 vaccine was my wake-up call. It shattered my trust and opened my eyes. And it led to me to discover the deeper hypocrisy of the organisation. But also it led to me learning the ultimate freedom, the freedom that comes from Christ. I want to share this with you, not to attack you or anyone, but to encourage you. There is hope and there is truth. So if my story resonates with you, please like this video and share it with somebody who you feel might need it. And subscribe for more content like this. But most of all, seek Jesus Christ. The Bible says, seek and you will find. He will never mislead you, like the Watchtower has. So, I want to thank you for listening to my story. I will say God bless you all. And until the next time, I'm going to say bye.